WeSurf is recorded by the NewsStand studio in Rockefeller Center in the heart of Manhattan and is produced and distributed by the Swell Seasons Surf Radio Podcast Network. Hey everyone, thank you. Happy New Year to one and all. This is our first one for the 2023, and Nigel is not with us today. He had to take care of something, but don't worry, we got this covered. We will do him proud. So Nigel, we miss you, but he'll be here for the next one. Okay, with me today, I'm really excited about this because a little bit of a background. I saw a sneak peek of the documentary that we're going to speak about earlier on in 2022, and I cannot wait for it until it comes out. So I have with me today the executive producer, Beyin Abraha, and the director, David Mesfin of Wade in the Water, a journey into black surfing and aquatic culture.
Doing well.
Gentlemen,
doing
how
well.
are you guys
Stoked
doing?
to be here. Thanks for having us.
Doing good. Doing good.
Perfect. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us. And just so everyone knows, they are on the West Coast. So, it's like the middle of the day for them. So, once again, thank you for taking time out of your schedules just to be with us today. Okay. So just to start off, for those of you who don't know, for our viewers who don't know about the project, can you
David,
just tell us a little bit about the project?
Give a little spiel?
Yeah, sure. So Wade in the Water is really looking into the 1,000-year-old history of black surfing and the culture, beginning with, Senegal all the way to Angola. And then it gets also into the history of, the African-American portion of the story in Southern California, specifically talking about, the Jim Crow era, surfers like Nick Gabaldon, all the way to current day, organizations that have been around supporting black surfing, to name a few: Black Surfing Association, Black Surfers Collective, some of the new ones, Cult the Water, you have Soulfly. So the intent of this project was to highlight these stories, looking back to our history of surfing from Africa all the way to the Americas, and end goal being to really inspire the next generation of black surfers. So our intent has always been, share this story, inspire younger generation of surfers to come out and reconnect to the ocean. So that's Wade in the Water.
Great. So Bain, how exactly did you get
Good
involved
question.
in this?
First of all, I guess David and we met through Instagram, kind of the Black Dot Surfers Instagram community that Kaita Johnson runs. Yes.
Instagram connecting the world again.
But yeah. So we met through there, and I actually founded one of the surf schools that David talked about, Softly Surf School, with my friend Saw and my friend Ashley. And so David, he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I'm doing this cool project. I would love to feature you in it. And being an East African surfer, we could really relate on kind of a new level." And so I didn't know anything about the project. We were just trying to meet, and we actually had some tough time kind of aligning on everything, but we finally met, and he kind of explained to me a little bit about it. And just like you, Kwame, I was just amazed by the kind of magnitude of the project, and the goal of the project was very in line with kind of what I was trying to do already in my own life. And so, I told him, whatever I can do to help, whatever you need, let me know. And I think the first time we worked together was in a shoot with Kevin Dawson. And I always like to tell people, I got an SD card from Stickbones. That was the first real value that I was able to add. And then that kind of led into, the next shoot and the next shoot. And then I think David wanted some surf footage, and I was already surfing with a bunch of people. And, it's really easy to tell people, hey, come to the beach. I have someone filming. David thought it was like a really valuable thing for him. For me, it was like making my life easy. And so, yeah, eventually he said, you're doing a lot on the project. I want you to be the executive producer. And so, yeah, no experience. I'm an engineer by trade. But yeah, I think I was able to leverage a lot of like my skills and experiences in that world and kind of help David out to produce the documentary.
Okay. So David, sounds like you invited Beyin to join the project, and the two of you just had it happen from there, right?
Yeah, meeting Beyin, the great part about meeting Beyin, I've known a lot of the surfers, the local surfers, through Black Surfers Collective. I joined Black Surfers Collective when they initially launched Nick Gabaldon Day 2011. I've been going out teaching kids how to surf. I've been surfing since like the early 90s. So I knew the community, but with Beyin, he really knew the younger generations, like the Color the Water, Soulfly Surf School, and a bunch of other individuals that I didn't know. So he was able to open that part of the story. We're able to share, the story of the past, or, the elder generation that have been surfing for a while, and then the younger generation, Beyin. And then, like he said, he was an engineer by trade. I mean, an amazing engineer. But when he came on board, I showed him the ropes here and there, what we need to do in terms of production. The Kevin Dawson was like the first production that he was on, just pointing things out to him, like, this is a second camera. Your job is basically
literally like you press this button.
And you did an amazing job.
I didn't know anything.
Well, actually, the first interview was Allison,
okay.
not Kevin. So Allison's was the first interview, and Allison Jefferson, she's the one who gets into the story of the Jim Crow era in Southern California and so forth. So it was educational for us, just hearing her. But at the same time, it was our first opportunity to film, to bring this idea, this concept to life. How do we want to do these interviews? So Beyin picked it up. So it's been really a pleasure working with him, not only in terms of like the technical, the connection with the community, but now like we're getting to a point of promoting it. He's kind of taken on the promotion aspect of it, reaching out podcasters and PR and so forth. So yeah, I have to give Beyin, all the credit for being such an amazing executive producer.
Great. Excellent. So you mentioned the name Kevin Dawson twice. Now, Ben, when you a little bit of a background, I gave David the story of how you and I met. But so to give our viewers and listeners a story on how Beyin and myself met, during one of when you were showing the preview, and Nigel and myself, we sat on the panel at Patagonia Brooklyn, and that's how Beyin and I initially met. And I mean, I think we've had some like great conversations since then. A lot of what happened with that, and one of the names which Beyin mentioned to me a few times was Kevin Dawson. So I went online and I read up on this guy, and I found out about him, and I went out. One of the first things I did was went out and bought his book right here, Undercover of Power. But there you go.
Mine is back home. Mine is home.
I had to pick it up.
I have it with me. I have it. I promise.
You gotta carry it at all times, my brother.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a plug for Kevin Dawson's book right now. It's called Undercurrents of Power: Aquatic Culture in the African Diaspora. This is the book. I bought it, and mine doesn't have the paper that David's has, but that's because I write in mine constantly. I'm always going back and forth in this book. So that's a little plug right there. So if you want to read it, please go get it. It's an amazing book. Or if you see me in Rockaway, just ask to borrow my copy. And it's an amazing book. But that's one of the names you mentioned. And then David, you also mentioned Allison as well. And just looking at the website, there are a lot of advisors that you guys spoke to. So this is not just a project like, oh yeah, let's just speak to who we have, So can you speak a little bit about the individuals you spoke to and what they gave to you and how you were able to fit that into the documentary and into the film?
Yeah, sure. I think the first, person I of course interviewed was Kevin Dawson, was through Zoom. Mm-hmm. The project, just going back, to how the project started, it was during, COVID, Black Lives Matter had happened. We're all, during the shutdown. And as a creative person, I just felt like, I needed an outlet, just like any other creative. If you're a poet or musician, you want to create something up from what you feel. And for me, it was really, I wanted to give back something to a community that's been great to me, which is, the Black Surfers Collective. So I reached out to them initially and we talked about, just doing maybe portraits. And I lightly talked about, doing a documentary because I was working on the framework and how it would come to life. And then the book Afro Surf also arrived at my house from Mamiwata. And, I opened first chapter right there. You have that quote from Kevin Dawson that, 1,000 years back, surfing began in Africa from the coast of Senegal to Angola. And that changed everything, right? So here I am, been surfing since the 90s. And I've always said this to even, Beyin. When you go paddle out, you feel like an outsider. You were never welcome as part of the surf culture per se. You always paddled out. You felt like, this wasn't part of your culture and you were kind of borrowing it. People, the cliche is Black people don't surf. You hear that all the time. And when I read that quote, it goes back to the objective of this project, which is to inspire the next generation of Black surfers. And to do that, we really have to embrace our history. And that's what Kevin Dawson, going back to Kevin Dawson, what he's done is he's 10 years of research has led to this amazing book that gets into these amazing stories of, 1640, when the first written record of surfing was discovered in the coast of Ghana, whereas Captain Cook arrived 1776 in Hawaii. These are like informations that we really need to share. It wasn't going to be, for me, it wasn't going to be just a post. And that, led to wanting to tell the story, the origin story of Africa. And to do that, I had to ask him if he's available to be part of the cast and be able to answer the question. I got on the Zoom, man. Kevin is like one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. Just breaks down the history right there. I think I'll press record. I still have that recording, just in case, I'm like, record. And, I captured him telling me all this story just the same way as you. I think, I still have like the tabs on here where there's like interesting stories that he shared with me at that moment that I wrote down. And then I went back, read his book. And then when Beyin and I, went back and started interviewing him, we started creating the framework of telling the story, not only of Africa, but also of the Caribbean story when African Americans arrived in the Caribbean, what took place, how they interacted with the enslavers, and then also telling the story of the African American, story in the Americas. So it's way deeper than, just the African story. It really brings you back to the Americas, and every part of it is connected to, aquatic culture, surfing, and how that has been part of our story. And it's really, the key part of this documentary is that, that's what's going to inspire, I think, the next generation of Black surfers is to embrace aquatic culture and surfing. And he does that through his
And then Kwame, if I could add to that kind of,
Excellent.
a lot of the other cast members, they,
Please.
they're not historians or academics or, people that have been telling the history of the sport or, of Africa, but they are, we wanted to get a diverse kind of looking or diverse cast in terms of what they do in their lives. Like if they are professional surfers or they run a community organization or, they live in Trinidad. We have Chris Dennis, for example, from Trinidad. That's a totally different story. We have like Angel Jardine, where she's like a 15-year-old surfer that was adopted, like an Ethiopian surfer that was adopted by a Canadian family that lives in Maui now. He wants to be a professional surfer. And then we have people like Sa that started his own organization. We have people like Jessa, that started kind of a search school or a surf collective for women of color, for example, So we tried to get this diversity. We tried to document the diversity of the community. Just, I guess, for a few reasons. Just one, there's this idea that, Black people are not monolithic in nature. It's not just one type of person. It's all people can look like all kinds of different shades, colors, have different interests. But more than that, really help people find their group or their niche that might be very valuable for them. If you're a woman of color, Jess's group Intersection Surf is a paradise for you. You meet all these women of color. But then if you are, a young kid trying to be a professional surfer, you would love to follow Angel Jardine and see his whole journey. If you live in Trinidad, we'd love to connect with Chris Dennis. So we wanted to kind of get that diversity. So more about the cast. They've really, added to this whole kind of story, and everyone has their own little story. And I think David, something that one of the big lines of the documentary, Rick Blocker, he says that, we really need to tell our history. That's all it really takes. And what that means is to tell our own personal stories. And if we do that across the board, that will really be a good representation of that history. And so, yeah, just a little bit more of a cast. That's kind of my take on the different cast members and the landscape of how the kind of cast looks.
Yeah, that's great. No, I mean, I just hearing the two of you speak right now, it's amazing. So, like David, I mean, I think almost every surfer of color or black surfer has heard at some point in their life, you're black,
exactly.
Right? Why are you being out there in the water? For me personally, it was what are you trying to be an awesome white dude for? You're black, right? So, and that unfortunately stopped me from learning to surf at an earlier age. So I learned how to surf in my 20s, but back when I expressed to people, I want, because I remember, and I've told this story to many people, the first time I watched, I was watching North Shore, and then the next year I watched Point Break, and I was in the movie theater watching Point Break, literally like this, just fascinated with what was happening on the screen. And I decided, I want to learn how to surf. And I told my friends, and they were like, what are you trying to be an awesome white boy for? So it was just, so that kind of like shut me down. It shouldn't have, but nowadays I make it a point, but anyone's like, you have no reason not to be in the water. You belong in the water. Our people were in the water for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon thousands of years. So we belong there, so.
Yeah, no, image is everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think in many ways, this documentary and how, just like Beyin said, Rick's quote is basically, we have to tell our stories, right? Through our image, through our experience. And that I think has a powerful impact in how the younger generation or people who've thought about surfing reconsider getting out and learning how to surf. I think there's this image and this information that's been in America that Black people don't know how to swim, Black people don't know how this and that. So, which is unfortunate, even in this day and age, to think as such, or anyone to have such a narrative around what African Americans can do or what Black people can do is it's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
So for us, I think for Beyin and I, we wanted to make sure, how we portray the individuals that are in the documentary, how we tell the story, and how we bring it to life. It's always been, trying to find the most authentic and factual way. It's always been, not to get into argument, even, the story of like where surfing started. Like, we don't want to get into a point of like having those conversations. What we want to focus is the history of it, the true fact coming from Kevin Dawson, talking about a lot of the challenges African American faced then and currently are facing. I mean, there's posts like a few days ago, we saw posts from Jessa, her experience at a beach with her boyfriend. So this is an ongoing thing, but we do need to change the narrative. We do need to change the image and what surfers look like. And I hope this documentary would do that, given, the academia, given, the organizations, given the individuals that are in the project. So we're really excited about the February screening. It's,
I'm excited.
It's just like, it's been an ongoing project for Beyin and I, just like noodling with it, and it's finally coming together. Like, we just finished the music. We're finishing up the coloring and stuff. So it's going to be amazing, and we think it's going to be really impactful.
And just Kwame, if I could add one more thing, I think there's this historical kind of flip side of it, which I think is for me, it was extremely impactful. For David, it inspired this whole project. For you, Kwame, you were already doing this research before we even had that conversation. You told me, like, this is very in line with the stuff that I've been looking into. But I think for a lot of young people, they might not be as interested in the historical aspect of it. It might be cool, like, oh, there was surfing in Africa. That might be a cool thing. But, when I was a kid, I didn't care about history. I was not really that interested in like what happened before. I was like, hey, let's go play basketball or something, whatever, And so I think what we've been really trying to do very intentionally, and I don't like saying this too loud, but it's kind of putting the medicine in the candy. We're trying to wrap together this really entertaining, really kind of cinematic piece that, tells a cool story. But then through that, you learn all these things about African culture, African surf culture. You learn about modern day organizations. And then a big person, part of our documentary that's really doing that at a really, really large impact level is someone named Brick and Gage. They have this Ebony Beach Club kind of like brand, which they do these big beach parties, and I think Kwame, a big point that you touched on is kind of the way that surfing is viewed in the Black community itself, right? We're trying to change the whole idea of surfing just globally, but even in the Black community, it's already, you face a lot of resistance. Like all of us have faced resistance from our friends. Like, why you're going to go surfing? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a totally weird thing, And so kind of like skateboarding was never cool in the Black community until like Lil Wayne was really started to skate. And now a lot of Black kids skate. It's not something weird at all, especially in Rockaway, right? But now surfing is still kind of behind on that kind of stage. And so Brick is doing a lot of great work to really get that younger generation interested in beach culture, surf culture. And, then through that, they can get exposed to it. And if they're interested, they have the opportunity to learn more and learn how to surf and things like that. So I just wanted to mention that kind of, the younger generation might be more interested in those kind of more fun-oriented groups that incorporate a lot of other elements of beach life, beach culture, which Black people can more so relate to. And then, through that, indirectly, it's into surfing. So, I just wanted to mention it.
No, thank you. So, David, just to let you know, I've already bought my ticket.
There we go.
I will be there for the screening. I told Beyin the other day.
Meet you in person, man.
I told Beyin the other day, I will be there. I told Nigel, I was like, I don't know if you're coming, but I am coming. So I've already bought my ticket. Awesome. I know when I'm going. I will be there. So, so expect to see me there. So you touched on something, and I didn't know, David, and Beyin, I actually heard you say it when we were doing the kind of the pre-screening. So I guess my question then is, how do you answer people who may approach you and say, you are trying to rewrite the history of surfing by saying that surfing started in Africa, or as opposed to surfing started in the Hawaiian Islands or in Polynesian Islands? So what's your response
David,
to those?
You want to go?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And, I am not a historian. I think Kevin Dawson will probably do a better job answering this question. All that I tried to do was to tell his story that surfing existed 1,000 years ago. And when it comes to the documentary, it's really comparing the first written record, account, I should say, of surfing, which was 1642 in Ghana in 1770. So those are the two comparisons. It really doesn't get into like, where did surfing start? Like we don't get into that. I don't think this is the documentary to talk about, or I am the right person to talk about where surfing began. So that is, like you said, it's a touchy subject matter. We love Hawaii. We love the culture, the history where surfing is originated, as many people know. We're just focusing on what we found about the 1,000-year and the account. But to be specific about where surfing started, I think that needs to go to more of a Kevin Dawson or other.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And if I could add anything to that is, by no means are we trying to take this kind of aggressive position, like, we started it and then, it got to somewhere else and then they brought it to someone. No, we're not interested in that at all. Like David said, we're just honestly retelling. We're documentarians. We're not providing commentary. We don't have any degrees in history. We're just documentarians. So we're just really forwarding people's information. Kevin Dawson, his whole scholarship is about African surf history. So if you have a problem with that, he would be, like David said, really the right person to read his book, understand, maybe send him an email, things like that. But yeah, by no means we're trying to compete. We're not trying to be aggressive. Like, we definitely want to respect the Hawaiian tradition of surfing, and that's been a hugely impactful, and especially from a competitive nature and from a commercial nature. The Hawaiian surf culture has been the center of all surf culture really for as far as we can remember, as far as surfing. And so that's nothing we'd ever kind of take away from. That's a huge point we want to be very clear on. We're not, no competition. There's nothing like that. We're just documenting history and forwarding history, like David said.
Great. So when I was in undergrad, I remember I had this one professor who actually who studied at UCLA, and he's now back and teaching at UCLA. But he always used to say that in American history, it always appears that everything starts off in the West and it makes its way east. So I kind of feel that, with so you guys are doing this documentary, and it started off in California, and there are all these groups and organizations out in California that are promoting Black surfing and sort of surfers of color and so on. And we're starting to see more and more of that appearing on the East Coast, not just in the Northeast, but then also making its way down the entire East Coast as well. So I guess my question then is, how do you feel about that? Because we're seeing like a lot of duplication and a lot of, do you see this as a positive thing? Do you think it might get saturated?
What would you say?
No, I don't believe in the saturation, because each story is unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're one of many people trying to tell this story, and we're not, in no ways we're the first ones, right? Yeah.
Right.
The bloggers who've been working on it for years and years here, documenting that is from like the 60s, 70s, and so forth, comes from him. So this has been an ongoing documentation. We are fortunately the first Black director, producer, and editor. Just to plug a name in, Taferi is our editor, who's also from East Africa. It's we're lucky enough to get this feature documentary out. That said, I don't think, people telling a different narrative or how they approach the story. Like, for example, in the East Coast of United States, there's such a rich story about aquatic culture, during the Civil War, prior to Civil War, when African Americans first arrived, in the East Coast, and how the aquatics versus the Americans. There's a lot of history that has not been told, so it'll be interesting to hear that part of the story. Current day, there's so many organizations like, your surf shop and so forth. That story needs to be captured. So I just feel like we're one of many. We're lucky to make it this far, but I hope my hope is that different directors, different storytellers come out and tell a different part of these stories. Like, when you look at surfing in general, there's so many films about surfing. Like, there's films from a brand, there's films about a specific surfer, there's a film about particular groups traveling, whether Endless Summer or Big Wednesday, like a feature film. That needs to happen. Those perspectives needs to be told. So I'm actually looking forward to hear other stories other than
Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, when you say that, I think more about the community organizations that are active in Florida, New York, and in the West Coast, in Trinidad, things like that. And for me, I think the more the better. I think especially if people are doing it, with passion, with their own intention, and they're really focused and committed to it. I think the more of those people doing that kind of work, especially the ones that feel called to do that work, I think that's super powerful. I think the better that we can work together with all those people, that's really my thing. I really see myself as this kind of connector in the community, kind of providing the service. And with David, I was lucky enough to be able to connect him with a lot of those community organizations. And yeah, I've just seen so many powerful things happen when people come together. Like, just to name a few, like a Great Day in the Stoke was a huge surf competition, probably the biggest collection of Black surfers ever in history, right? And that was impossible without the community outreach, without, you tell a friend, they tell a friend, tell a community organizer, they tell their community, that's all super powerful.
Right.
And then another big event is a Paddle for Peace Juneteenth. We have a huge event that a lot of orgs come together and take part in. Even with Ebony Beach Club, there's some big orgs kind of come together, making that impact. So I think like David Milana, he has a big kind of, he's very collaborative. He's one of the founders of Color the Water. And him and Lizelle Jackson, they say, we're better together. And they've been helping us out on Southwest. We're a new surf school. And, they could look at us kind of as competition and try to take the market share and this or that. But they've never a day in their lives thought about that. They were so helpful to us starting out. They give us boards, wetsuits, all kinds of things, help, advice, and everything. So I think that mentality and collaboration, and, if you have that passion to do something of your own, I would say, the more the better. And we could use all the help we can get. The faster we can drive this storm forward, the better. So, yeah, I don't think there's any problem at all.
Yeah. Right. Very well said. And so you mentioned community as well. So before you jumped on, Beyin, David and I were talking, and I was explaining to David how you and I realized Chris Dennis. And it always surprises me that we don't know each other, but then when we find out that we know someone who knows someone, the community is just gotten so, it's big, but at the same time, it's very tight knit. So, Quest and Paul out here in Rockaway, I know Quest and Paul, Beyin, and then, I met someone, I was down in Florida a couple of months ago, and I met someone who actually knew Quest, and then knowing Chris Dennis, who's in Trinidad, and Chris, and I was actually looking through, I don't want to call them by the wrong name, but posters?
Like portraits? Yeah, portraits.
Is that what you call them? So, the portraits, right, the portraits. So the portraits that you have, I was flipping through the portraits, and I was like, hold up a second. I know this dude. I know this guy. It's right there under the name. Chris. I'm like, wow. So then we started talking. Yeah, it just blew my mind that of all the people that in the entire Caribbean that you could have gone to, you chose Chris Dennis, who interviewed me a while back for the Aloha.
No, I remember Kwame. You remember when I think I was about to visit Chris in Trinidad. And I was so excited that I remember I called you and I said, hey, we got to do the podcast like we talked about. And, we're premiering the documentary. I wanted to give you some information. And I was like, we were just casually talking. And you're like, hey, what are you up to? I was like, I'm going to Trinidad next week. I'm super excited. And you were like, oh, I can help you out. I'll give you some recommendations. And he's like, I have a really good friend of mine. Are you going like out east? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be staying like right there. Like, what's your friend? And you're like, his name is Chris. I was like, Chris Dennis? No way. And I was actually staying with Chris, and I was like, wow. And on that trip is what I realized as well, like how small it really is. It's an international community, from Africa to the Caribbean to all over the world, Hawaii, all over the world. But everyone kind of somehow knows someone that knows someone. Yeah. And like you say, Quest and Paul, quick plug to stop playing with them. And everyone knows each other and really tight in the community. But it's so powerful that way, that's when the impact can really be way bigger than the individual pieces, so I really
and what I've found is that the community is so tight knit that even if you don't know the person, you can say, oh yes, I know David, I know Beyin, I interviewed that. Oh yeah, you're the guy from the podcast. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, come, let's sit down, let's talk, and it just flows. The conversation just flows after that. So yeah, it's pretty great. So speaking of the portraits, you have a lot of portraits on the website. Yep, 2 in the background right there. And so can you give us a little bit of information on what those are about? Because, like I said, I recognize Chris because I know him. We all know Salema, and there are a few other people in there, including founders of the Black Surfers Association. So can you give us a little bit of background on those?
Right. So going back to the original idea of this project, when it was during COVID, like as I indicated earlier, and the thought was to do portraits of the individuals from Black Surfers Collective. And during COVID, I was exploring different ways of, photography and IG, how you could put animation around the face and so forth. So the concept behind the portraits was, is there a way to reconnect back to our roots as Africans, right? So in my backyard, there's this amazing tree, and And, I took pictures of it. Actually, I used my daughter as a test. So I took a portrait of her. Then I put the leaf around her face. I was like, oh, this is looking really cool in terms of like, having the leaf on the right and left side, and it looked like a beautiful art piece. And then, one morning I woke up and I'm like, I should really know what this tree is. What's the name of the tree? Like that way so I can articulate, thinking behind the tree, the connection, and so forth. So I went in the backyard, used one of the apps, and I did a little read on it. And it's an African tree. It originated from Africa. It's an African palm tree. And I was just blown away, like how things just came together in terms of conceptually wanting to reconnect to Africa through these leaves, through these trees, kind of covering your face and so forth. But at the same time, to find out this is an African tree made it even better. So as I began the interviews, I started taking portraits and putting the leaves around people's faces and making these amazing portraits. And the thinking behind it was, to make these portraits as art piece, put them in a gallery, sell them, and then a percentage of it would go to the nonprofit organizations that we selected. So that's really the objective and the thinking behind it. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, because just looking at them, they're very powerful. And for the viewers, if you can just look over David's shoulder, they are very powerful photos. And if you're just listening to this, then I highly suggest you go to the website, and I'll let you guys look at what the website is a little bit later. But go check them out, because there's just looking at them, and there's some very powerful portraits, and you can actually sense the strength and the community as well comes through the portraits. And now knowing that it's an African
it's incredible.
No,
100%. Like one of the that Mami Wata, Salema's a brand that Salema co-founded. They put out this video called a woo woo moment, a very woo woo moment. And it was just the way that they came across their space in Venice and the connection to Salema's father back in the day. There was some crazy connection. Yeah, there were many woo woo moments part of this project, but this was definitely, in my experience, it was an amazing moment when he told me all that, and he was just playing with some concepts with Amra in the back, and then the fact that it was an African fur country, I was like, wow, that's like just insane. So yeah, I agree. Ooh, for sure.
Wow. So really quickly, to the viewers and listeners, if you have not purchased the Mami Wata book, I think you might be able to see it. There's blank copies like right about there on my bookshelf. You can see it.
Afro Surf. Hey, sir.
Oh, there you go. Afro Surf. So my copy is like right about there on my bookshelf, but it's a very, very interesting and powerful read as well. And of course, like I said, if you're in Rockaway and you just see me, just ask to borrow my copy, and it's great. Yeah.
While we're on plugging books, let's plug Allison Jefferson's book as well. This is an amazing book.
That's a new one. I haven't seen this one. Okay.
Yeah, this is an amazing book. You can go to our website. It's Living the California Dreams. A lot of the story about, the Jim Crow era and so forth in Southern California, Nick Gabaldon and so forth. All of that was in here.
Yeah. I don't know if you could...
documentary.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember
when we're at it.
When you would have to write papers, you'd have to have some references. You have to have some citation.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always just have the citations, to have the citations. Just like look up whatever fit, and I put it in, right? But these citations, they're very organic. They're like really influenced the project. Yeah, the project came from these references. So if you want to learn more, they're definitely great. They're not just citations for the sake of having citations, like how I used to do it in English class.
Right.
These are real ones.
And we will be right back. And now, back to our show.
What I like now is that whether you guys have realized it or not, but you've done the work. You've gathered everything together and put it in one place. So as opposed to one person go read Kevin Dawson and then, okay, what else do I have to do? Now they go look it on Google and then search through how many different pages. Okay, this person is reputable. So you guys have already done the legwork for us. So it's already there. All the work is already there. The people that we should read, and that will open the minds to read even more again.
Yeah,
So,
no problem at all.
thank you
I'm really excited for how people are
so
going
much.
to interpret everything and kind of make their own project. I feel like we're just starting things out,
Mhm.
I think there's so much more that can be done. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm excited to see the impact, how everything will play out, and really that kind of wave of impact. I'm really like looking forward to all that. That's
Yeah, I'm very excited to see it as well, because I know because I've seen other documentaries before about black surfers. The one that sticks out in my mind first and foremost is Whitewash.
Yeah.
So I did see that one, and that's kind of the one that opened my mind first, opened my eyes first. And even though, yes, I had been surfing for a while even before, after I had seen that, but watching that documentary, and then, it starts off pretty powerfully, but I'm not going to spoil it for our viewers, but there's this one gentleman in the documentary, and he's speaking to the interviewer, and he says point blank, I don't see why black people would want to go out into the water. I cannot see the connection between black people and surfing. And I'm looking at this with my head tilted, like, how do you not see the connection? There is documented scientific proof that when we are closer to water or in the water, we are happier. Why wouldn't you want to be happy? Go to the beach. And he just said, no, I don't go to the beach. I don't go to the water. I prefer to stay on land. Like, we need to change that mentality. That, we came from the water, not just black people, but, humanity came from the ocean, and, we're happier. It's scientific proof. We are happier when we're close to it. The blue mind, follows along with that. So
yeah,
those are other things.
Go ahead, David.
We get into, so the narrative on the documentary is, the origin story, right? So it gets into 1,000 years, and then the pioneers. And it's hard, we say pioneers. I'm sure there's pioneers in the Caribbean and East Coast, but we try to capture the story through the lens of Nick Gabaldon. But then the next chapter, going back to the connection to the ocean, it's really the spiritual connection to the ocean, right? So for me, even Beyin, we come from, at least me being Ethiopian, from a landlocked nation, whereas Beyin's ancestors are from Eritrea, which is actually in the east coast of Africa. When I came to America, I was adopted at a very young age, and I came to St. Augustine, Florida. This is a city that has, very dark history in terms of civil rights movement and so forth. But the ocean for me became this amazing escape, and the connection to nature, the connection to Mother Ocean, that really changed my perspective of life, right? And to what you were saying earlier, for anyone, for African Americans, of course, it's important to reconnect, because the majority of Africans that were stripped, stolen from Africa, brought, had a connection to Mother Ocean. But eventually it was kind of stripped away from them. And as they start moving to the inner city, so reconnecting back to Mother Ocean, it's, reconnecting back to your roots. It goes back to the leaf, the tree and so forth. And I think it is important. It's healthy given, where we're at socially, talking about mental health and so forth. There's so many healing factors of the ocean that we know of as surfers that a lot of people are not experiencing. And hopefully, the impact of this film could be, people reconnecting, not just surfing, but actually going back to the beach and just hanging out on the beach, getting that breeze, just putting their feet in the water, and I think it's a very healing, it has a very healing quality to it. But then again, when you start adding this layer of learning how to surf, when you start adding this layer of like, hey, there's a community out there that can embrace you, whether it's in the East Coast or West Coast, that can protect you, can educate you about the etiquette of surfing. it's all there, we just need to communicate that. And hopefully, like Beyin was saying, with this documentary, we're able to inspire people. We're able to get people to connect back to the ocean. I hope people really, that's really what we want out of this. It's great to get the screening and this and that, but at the end of
and
the
if I
day,
can just
that's
add a
what's
little bit more,
important to us.
Kwame, I know like mental health and the spiritual side that David is mentioning, I think that's an incredibly important part, incredibly valuable, maybe more valuable for some people than others. But I think that connection between African people and water, there's, for me, what amazing things that I learned through this whole kind of journey was just the fact that Africa has, massive amounts of coastline that is just bombarded by the Atlantic swell, and it doesn't have a lot of natural harbors. It doesn't have a lot of like really quiet beaches. All their beaches are just being pounded by swell. And the rivers in Africa are massive, like way bigger than any of the rivers here in America. Kevin Dawson really goes in depth through all this. And so there were a lot of economic reasons why, human beings, we always live close to the water just because, just for washing things, transport, like it's just a very obvious thing for survival. And so that was no different in Africa, where humanity apparently started. And so that's already a massive, like really obvious and, irrefutable connection between African people and water. But then more than that, there's like for economics, right? If you want to travel from one place to another to trade, if you want to go to an offshore fishery, if you want to get your boat out and back in, you need to know what's going on with the shore break. When is the set coming? When is the lull? How are the winds? You need to know all these things. And so that was really amazing for me, like just the practical proof that, hey, Black people not only wanted to go up to the water and not only enjoyed the water, but they needed to be familiar with the water for their daily life, for their livelihood. And that is like really powerful, I think, for some people that might, doubt the more kind of casual side of things. This is way more practical, like hard to read it.
No, those are two very, very, very important points and very good points. But just speaking for myself, one of the things which I often do is I will sometimes go down to the beach, sit down, and match my breathing with the sounds of the waves crashing. And then as I inhale, as it's pulling away, and I exhale as I hear it crash. And that just calms me down completely, no matter what else is going on. Just like 5 or 10 minutes of that, I am completely calm afterwards. I don't have to jump in, just match my breathing with the ocean. And it's actually called Ujjayi breathing, which is ocean breath. So it's just keep on doing that. And Beyin, you raise a very good point. It's not that they just wanted to jump in the water and go, oh, I feel great. It was, this is our livelihood. This is how we're going to interact with the world. We do it the fastest way to get to some place was, go in the river, take a boat upriver, downriver. And that's how they used to go back and forth. And that's how we go back and forth. So yeah, both two excellent points on that one. So I'm going to start wrapping up, but I want to ask both of you a couple of questions, and then we go into the light questions, which we have to ask everybody at the end of it. But so you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you had your druthers perfect, before I say that really quickly, just a little bit of background for me. So my family on my mother's side grew up in Nigeria, and I still have a lot of family in Nigeria. And, I communicate with my cousins and my uncles and all of them a lot. And I was actually telling them about not just this documentary, but about Kevin Dawson's books and so on. And my cousin, one of my cousins said point blank, when this comes out, let me know how I can find out about this, because I want my children to watch this.
Oh, wow.
And she said, so I said, yeah, absolutely. As soon as, it's made available, I will let you know. And she's like, no, I really want, and she's a teacher. And she's like, I want to be able to show this to my class. And so you have at least one classroom in Nigeria to watch the documentary.
Yeah. All right.
So, so I guess my question was, if everything worked out perfectly for you guys, what would be the perfect outcome for once the documentary show, and you see it happening in the next, say 2 months after the documentary happens, and then the next year and the next 3 years, it just grows and grows and grows. What would be the perfect scenario for you?
Yeah. So, I think distribution, right? So talking about Nigeria in a classroom, what is the widest distribution that we can get to get the story out? If our objective is to inspire, young Black surfers or, anyone really, is to get the story out. So distribution would be the ideal outcome of this, being able to share it with young and old, Africa, Asia, everywhere. And I think the other thing is changing the perspective, right? So when you go out surfing, that narrative of, Black people don't surf. I mean, that doesn't happen in Africa. If you go to Africa, everyone is, surfing, swimming, like Megan was taking these large rivers. We're very much connected to the ocean, the rivers and so forth. And America is quite different, and how, the stories are portrayed in America, how the narratives change in America has a global effect, vis-a-vis Hollywood and so forth. So really want to change that narrative. So that'll be the second biggest objective.
Yeah. I mean, I think our, again, high level goal, like I'm very like a standard. I like to work through a process. And so I think, like we always said from the day one, was like just to inspire the next generation of Black surfers. And I think maybe an analogous goal is to change surf culture and what surfing as a Black person means within surf culture, or what being a surfer means within surf culture. I think those are the big, highest level goals. And then I think if you go down the levels, I think to do that, we need a lot of exposure. We need a lot of people to know about this thing, because knowledge is really what changes people's decisions, changes people's mindsets. And so that's really the big goal. And the way to do that is through distribution, and either, someone buying our project and, getting it out, or someone helping us distribute it, something like that. And that's really that's the whole reason. I mean, Kwame, I love talking to you, all the great conversations we've had, but we're really here to promote our documentary. We want to get it to the right hands, the right ears.
No, please.
The whole point. We've been really working really hard on the PR side to really get the word out, to give people confidence that, hey, this is going to be a powerful project. A lot of people need to see this story, this information. And I just want to shout out to one person that's really been helping us do that extremely. And his name is Zahil McDonald. He's a great friend of mine, met him surfing actually in Mexico, and he's a person of color, and he's a great writer, PR coordinator, and he's been helping us really go through that whole process of reaching out to different publications and getting that word out. And so, yeah, that's the whole goal right now, is to just, distribution. And then once we get this guy out the door and everything is cool with this, then hopefully, we want to do projects in the future in the same vein and continue that storytelling, because there are a million stories that can be told. I think we can do a whole documentary on each specific person that we even talk about. And so there's just so much to do. And so, yeah, like David said, I think, to inspire the next generation, change surf culture and what it means to be a surfer. And then, yeah, just the way we'll do that is through distribution and those film festivals that we're hopefully going to launch in February. And hopefully that goes all very well.
Okay, so you heard it, folks. Word of mouth. If you want to hop on the plane with me to California, come on down. Living Airbnb is a lot cheaper with there are more people, so you're more than welcome. And just letting you guys know right now, my plan is, I know you guys are going to be super busy, all over the place, but my plan is to at least try to grab you for like 5 minutes of just like a quick interview at the
5 minutes, brother.
Appreciate
that. Come on now.
No, definitely, because I really think that you guys are doing an amazing thing here. And I really wanted everyone to know as much about it as much as possible. So, before I forget, how can people get in touch with you guys? The website, Instagram. Let us know. We'll put it into the show notes, but feel free to say it now as well.
Yeah, so a lot of plugging. So in terms of the website, you can learn about the project and the screenings that are going to come out. It would be at wadeinthewaterproject.com. So there you can find all the information. In terms of screening, we're going to premiere in the U.S. starting with Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and that's going to be February 11th and 12th.
Okay, we'll
11th and 12th.
We'll have everything.
We'll have it. We'll put it in the show notes with the confirmation. Don't worry about it.
So Santa Barbara International Film Festival will be, Saturday and Sunday. Again, confirmed on our website. And then from there, we're going to go to the Pan-African Film Festival, which is the 18th. We're excited about that particular film festival. And then we'll work with Surfrider Foundation LA on the 22nd in LA, hopefully in partnership with Patagonia, Santa Monica. And then the last screening in February is going to be at San Diego State, just the following day, the 23rd. And we'll have all that information on our website. But, before we hang up and all that good stuff, I do want to give some credit out to our sponsors, which is really, really important. This would not have happened without the support of Meta LA. That was a team that brought us in and supported us financially. Another organization that has been very supportive of the project is World Surf League, and we thank them for all the support, including San Diego State University. They have a specific program called Black Resource Center, Diversity and Surfing Skate. Dr. Gamble over there, shout out to Dr. Gamble for hooking us up and supporting us. But then again, there's a bunch of other partners, I'll riff off real quick. These are brand partners. So you have Mamiwata, Patagonia, Hilda Bay, Perspective Space, Traveler Surf Club. The actual office of Supervisor Holly J. Mitchell, who's been very supportive and want to be part of this project. And Ocean USA, which is where I work, Ruben Pastier and Associate. Last but not least, the post-production houses. This is all, done for free in support of this community and these, and us. So that Dan and Los Angeles, California Music, a group of amazing musicians that scored original music for us. We are Royale that did the opening title treatment, which is amazing. Can't wait to share it. Frontage Road Studio, Mike Warner there.
Incredible.
Yeah,
super
amazing. Helping
Michael Warner for sure.
Been with this journey from the beginning. Tafari Saifu, who's our editor, again from East Africa, and then Kira Linton, who's the other producer. So sorry, I had to send out a shout out. And the whole cast, man. Amazing cast. So thank you so much.
Please, this sounds like it's definitely been a labor of love for not just you guys.
And if I can just add, it really takes a village. Like you can see how big our cast is, how big our support crew is. It's like, it's not, you might see just David, the director, I'm producing it, but I mean, there have been dozens of people that have been helping us free of charge, like super valuable help. And, really that is critical. All of those pieces were extremely critical to making the project succeed at all. But yeah, I just wanted to say personally, thank you to you, Kwame and Nigel, for being open to kind of, align with our timeline and kind of just help us out. And yeah, thank you to everyone on the East Coast, Wes, Paul, kind of Rockaway crew, Kat, Joe, Barbie. I'm going to miss so many names, but thank you everyone, everyone. Yeah.
No, it was
So yeah, thank you guys so much. You guys have a really amazing kind of energy out there. Yeah, David, I can't wait the day that we both go together to the East Coast and check out the Rockaway. It's really amazing community.
Yeah, I can't wait either.
No, definitely. You are invited any and every time. Don't worry about it. With as short as notice that you need, just come on through. Okay, so on to the important questions. David, longboard or shortboard? Longboard, my man. I've searched with you, Beyin, before, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Longboard or shortboard? Yeah, all right, my man. Okay, see, everybody that we've had on the show before is like,
I got love for the shortboarders and the mid-length, and I'm coming soon, but I'm a longboarder.
No, because the thing is, so Nigel is the shortboarder who gets on a longboard if he has to. I'm the longboarder who gets on a shortboard if I have to.
That's a great way to put it.
So it's kind of like this back and forth type of thing. So yeah, so that's the way we always go back and forth with it like that. Favorite post-surf meal?
That would have to be boiled egg.
It's got to be poke for sure. Yes, poke, sushi,
poke bowls,
fish, love it.
Sushi. All right. Okay. Favorite post-surf drink?
I'm a purist.
All my friends, they make fun of me for carrying around this insulated water bottle. So definitely water, but sometimes if I feel tired, I need to go to work. Maybe a matcha and iced tea will do the trick.
Okay. So speaking of being tired and having to go to work, Dawn Patrol or Sunset Session?
Always Dawn Patrol. Yeah.
Dawn Patrol.
David surfs
Patrol.
like one
Dawn
supporter,
Patrol.
but
All
every
right.
time we surf together, it's been Dawn Patrol.
Like, yeah. So then, David, you and I can hang because I mean, the minute
Yes,
I mean, I'm usually waiting.
I remember,
the sun.
Kwame, I remember when I came to the Rockaway, you're like, I
Yes,
have
it
a
comes up.
really early lesson, but I better get to the beach before the sun comes out and use the city lights to light the water. I never heard that. I mean, I do first light, but I never heard it before first light. That was the first time. So I got to give you props for that.
Yeah. So I had a class early in the morning, and I told parents like, okay, I'm going to go surf before my class. Sun comes up at this time, and I need to get at least an hour in before my class. So that means we're going to be out there before the sun even comes up. So we're going to use the boardwalk lights and the lights, city lights.
I was there. I was awake.
Yeah. And
I'm down.
to his benefit, he was like, I'm down. Let's do it.
Shut up. All right. That's amazing, man. That's the best. There's no one out in the water.
No, it was just us, and and then we actually hopped from one beach to the other beach to another beach, and then we went back to another beach, and we're like, okay, we're good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for giving us the time and letting us know about the documentary. And folks, we've mentioned a few books in here. We're going to place those in the show notes as well. Definitely Kevin Dawson's book. Living the California Dream. I have not read that one. As soon as I get off this, I'm gonna order it on Amazon. Afro Surf, if you haven't read it, please go out, get the book. The Blue Mind. These are all books that I think everyone should at least lay their hands on at least once and fully read them through, because it tells us a lot about not just who we are, where we come from, but also
I just wanted to add, Kwame, I don't think we mentioned there's a mailing list on the website that people can join if they want updates, with the project.
Oh,
and then you can join that through the website. And then if you want more kind of, updates in your regular day-to-day life, Instagram page that we've documented all our previous events, the screening that we did in Brooklyn with Kwame and Nigel. It's David Mesfin Art. And hopefully that can be the show notes too. And we'll be really posting everything across those two resources. And so if you want to stay up to date with the project, Instagram, David Mesfin Art, and then the mailing list through wadeinthewaterproject.com. Follow us.
Epic. Absolutely. Please definitely follow him. That documentary is going to be huge. I really think it is. It is. Because it's from Nigeria. So.
Looking forward to see you in LA, man.
Oh, absolutely. No, definitely. Like I said, my ticket is already purchased. I am coming down the weekend of President's Day. Independence Day is the Monday. I'll be there the Thursday.
Let's go for a surf. Let's get David out in the water.
So I'll be there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dawn Patrol. Longboard. Let's go.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Okay. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
All right. You as well. Cheers.